What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So we've got another Trump win in the courts, y'all. Oh yeah, Trump is winning all over the place in the court system. But if you listen to the corporate press, go over to MSNBC, Trump is losing every single case. But he's not. And it's clear. If you go look at the cases that he's won, there's been an unprecedented amount of court cases against the Trump administration. The second one, there was an unprecedented amount against the first one, but the second one, holy crap. It's insane, y'all. Judge tosses lawsuit over Trump's firing of U.S. African Development Foundation board members. So this was an entire situation, y'all. Just this by itself. But we'll get into that. Let's get into the story because there's a whole lot of backstory that the corporate press just so happens to not be telling you at all. Let's get into it. We'll clear the air, if you will. A federal judge has tossed out a lawsuit over President Donald Trump's dismantling of a U.S. federal agency that invests in African small businesses. Now, right off the jump, like, why are we doing that? Why does the United States invest in small business in Africa, for crying out loud? Like, why? When we are spending, like, a lot of money in a deficit. $1.8 trillion in a deficit. We do not have the funds to invest, for goodness sakes. Not in a possible failed business. Like, I'm sorry. I don't like gambling with tax dollars. I don't like gambling with my own money. I really don't want the government gambling. Like investing, that's kind of a gamble, if you will, because if you invest a bunch of money into a business in Africa and then it gets burned to the ground because there's a freaking genocide going on, we don't get that money back, y'all. We just don't. And that to me is a waste of money. Sorry, if you can't run your small business, your business doesn't deserve to exist. That's just the reality of the world. Like, what would we do without the United States of America, for goodness sakes? A U.S. District Judge Richard Leon in Washington, D.C. dismissed the case on Tuesday, finding that Trump was acting within his legal authority when he fired the U.S. African Development Foundation's board members in February. In March, the same judge ruled that the administration's removal of most grant money and staff from the congressionally created agency was also legal as long as the agency was maintained at the minimum level required by law. USADF was created as an independent agency in 1980, and its board members must be confirmed by the U.S. Senate. In 2023, Congress allocated $46 million to the agency to invest in small agricultural and energy infrastructure projects and other economic development initiatives in 22 African countries. On February 19th, Trump issued an executive order that said USADF, the U.S. Institute of Peace, and the Inter-American Foundation and the Presidio Trust, I almost said the Presidento, the Presidio Trust should be scaled back to the minimum presence required by law. At the same time, USADF had 5 of its 7 board seats filled. A few days later, an administration official told Warren Brim that he was fired, and emails were sent to the other board members notifying them that they had also been terminated. But wait till you hear the corporate press excuse for this. Check this out. Those emails were never received, however, because they were sent to the wrong email addresses. So what they're not telling you in this is that these same board members, as a matter of fact, the employees of USADF, locked the doors and would not allow the Trump administration to gain access to the building when Trump's appointee for that position, because they had been fired, supposedly, but they didn't get the emails, right? Well, they locked we had to get the U.S. Marshals to come in, for goodness sakes, to gain entry to the building, right? In doing all of this, these people were obviously combative with the Trump administration officials, and so they gave out the wrong email addresses. So when they get emailed notifying them that they're terminated, they didn't receive those emails. But the corporate press, they're not going to tell you that, folks. Oh, they were just sent to the wrong email. That's what they said. Once again, folks, these people lie to you on a constant basis. You do not dislike the corporate press enough. I promise you that. You do not dislike these people enough. They are so manipulative. Like, they just left all that pertinent information out about this. That's pertinent information that they locked the Trump administration out and then gave out the wrong contact information. Since it is insane. It really is. The 4 board members, believing they still held their posts because they had not been given notice, well, that's also a lie, but we'll get to that later, met in March and passed a resolution appointing Brehm as the president of the board. But Trump had already appointed Pete Marocco as the new chairman of what the administration believed to now be a board of 1. Since then, both men have claimed to be the president of the agency, and Brehm filed the lawsuit in March 6th. Yep, both claim, but one is clearly not. Brehm was clearly terminated. But once again, Leon said that even though they didn't receive the emails, the 4 board members were effectively terminated in February, and so they didn't have the authority to appoint Brehm to lead the board. Brehm's attorney, Bradley Gerard, with Democracy Forward, expressed disappointment with the judge's decision. What do you mean, express disappointment? The dude was clearly fired. But, according to the corporate press, not so clearly fired. But we'll get to that, like I said. But in our parallel case, Rural Development Innovations v. Marocco, a grantee, and 2 USADF employees have also challenged Marocco's unlawful appointment. You get that, huh? Unlawful appointment. Now, what the corporate press is doing right here, they're setting you up to believe that Marocco was unlawfully appointed with that statement. But watch what they do after that. Watch what they do after the unlawful appointment. Gerard wrote in an email. Oh, that was Gerard that said that. Right. The lawyer for the opposition. For the guy that got fired. We are hopeful that the court will reject the defendant's attempt to ignore the constitutional and statutory requirements for appointing board members to federal agencies. That lawsuit is still pending before the same judge. In that case, the 2 USADF staffers and a consulting firm based in Zambia that works closely with USADF contend that the Trump administration's efforts to deeply scale back the agency wrongly usurps Congress's power. They also say Marocco was unlawfully appointed to the board in part because he was never confirmed by the Senate as required. You know what? The interim appointees do not have to be confirmed by the Senate. So, lies. Once again, these people are lying to you. The corporate press is taking a lie from the defendant in a story and putting it in here as fact to make you believe that the Trump administration unlawfully appointed somebody to a position that this guy was fired from. Insanity, right? And then they're also giving you the excuse, oh, well, the Trump administration is usurping Congress's power. Well, hang on just a second, right? You might think, well, damn, the Trump administration is authoritarian. They just don't care about the legislative branch, right? Well, hang on. You've got, what was that in Zambia? I want to be factual about this. Right, so a consulting firm in Zambia is suing the Trump administration over this for the Trump administration supposedly usurping Congress's power. Huh? Are you kidding me with that? That would be under the sole authority of Congress. That would be like you or I. It's not even. That's a consulting firm from another country suing our government, our federal government, because our federal government, according to them, is usurping our legislative branch. You love how the corporate press just makes these narratives up as they go. You gotta love it, folks. That should be, don't you think, if the Trump administration was actually usurping Congress's authority, don't you think Congress would have something to say about that? Don't you think some of these Democrats in Congress, look, I understand partisan politics all day. Mike Johnson is a Republican, so sure, he you could call him a Trump shill, could call him whatever. Call him Trump's puppet, sure. Don't you think some Democrats in Congress would be standing up against this? Don't you think that if they were so inclined that they would sign on to this lawsuit, because they are part of the legislative branch? And if their power is getting usurped, don't you think they would have something to do with this? But they don't, do they? No, they don't. It's insane. There's a lot more going on in the background. And Donald Trump has every authority to shutter an agency down to minimum requirements by law. He most certainly has the right to do that. And that is not usurping Congress's power. As a matter of fact, Congress specifically doled that power out to the president because, once again, Congress apportions money and the federal government figures out where it's all going to go. I should say it like this. Congress appropriates money and the federal government apportions that money. We'll put it that way. There we go. Leon's ruling in Brim's case did not address whether the Trump administration had the power to install Morocco as board chair on a temporary basis. Yes, because that's not in question at all. Once again, the corporate press is just coming through for truth, justice, and journalistic integrity. For God's sakes. And I found all this to be really fascinating. When I was doing a little bit of research over this, I came across a news article from back when this all happened. Check this out, y'all. A Daily Wire investigation found that, according to the USAID Inspector General Zahiu, I guess that's how you pronounce it. I'm pretty sure it's not, but Zaiwei, I don't know, received secret payments to his personal bank account after improperly steering contracts to a friend. One of the contracts was for travel during COVID when no one was traveling. A search warrant was executed on Zahiu's phone in November, but as of now, he has not been criminally charged. The Daily Wire's investigation found that the African Development Foundation affirmed many of the fears that critics expressed about USAID, particularly that money advertised as going to poor people in third world countries was being rerouted to DC bureaucrats and their friends. The African Development Foundation sent grants to African groups on the condition that they send part of the money to American groups affiliated with agency officials and even wire money directly to personal bank accounts of foundation employees in Washington, the investigation found. By law, the group is only permitted to give aid to African groups, and the maneuvering allowed Congress to think it was a low-overhead charity sending the bulk of its money to Africans, when in reality it was essentially cooking the books. The grant was provided to an African organization. A grant can pay for people, Zahiu told the Daily Wire about one instance of the agency forcing an African group to use part of its grant to pay the salaries of D.C. staff. Yeah, granted, they were in D.C. He also said that after Doge changed the office's locks, he gained access through a back door. One longtime employee said the agency staff locked Doge out because the contracts don't make sense and they know Doge will find lots of wrongdoing and illegal activity. I'm not a fan of Doge, but some of the things they're doing need to be done. They've been operating like this for years, and no one did anything about it, she said. Yeah, this was an excerpt from that news article. Now, that Zahiu guy or whatever, that's the chief financial officer for that very group. And reading that news article even further, go on to find out that he was informed of the termination of Brim, the Brennan guy or whatever. So this is all just a fascinating news article, and I love how the Trump administration just wins on this. These people's lawsuits make absolutely no sense, and they're getting laughed out of court, essentially. Like, are you kidding me? This guy is suing the Trump administration because he made himself the president, essentially, because all of those people were terminated, right? Supposedly, the board members voted to put Brennan, or whatever his name is, as president, right? But they were all terminated, so they had no legal authority to appoint him as president. Then this guy goes and files a lawsuit because he was terminated. He was terminated. Like, are you kidding me with this? That's what's wrong with these people. That's why they were locked out. This is all insane, y'all. It really is. It blows my mind every time how the Associated Press just doesn't tell you all of that is highly pertinent to that news article, by the way. They're funneling money. They're laundering money, basically. And that's what I was always talking about when I say, oh, well, look, USAID was sending grants out and sending all this money out to these NGOs, and these NGOs were funneling this money right back into D.C., right back into Democrats' pockets. That's why they're so pissed for Trump going after USAID first. That's why they're so mad about that. That is Donald Trump kicking the legs out from underneath a bunch of their funding, a bunch of their money. This is great, y'all, and I'm loving every single minute of this Trump administration. I say every single minute. As you saw in the last video, yeah, I'm not too happy with some of the stuff, right? Some of the stuff, yeah, I don't like too much because it's wasteful. It's just ridiculous, kind of petty, if you will. But, you know, overall, the Trump administration's a net positive. Just blatantly a net positive, which is a lot more than I could say for any other president in my entire lifetime, and probably any other president for a very, very long time, like talking decades long time here. But I just wanted to bring that story to you guys because I found it to be fascinating as hell. But I want y'all to let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comments section. Blows my mind right out of the backside of my head, y'all. It really does. But yeah, like I said, y'all let me know what y'all think. Y'all don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, and share this video all over the place. Sign up, become a member, do all that goobly gobbly stuff. And y'all try to have a good day. Stay logical. Peace.